right, welcome to the Krueg Show. Larry Krueger, joined by former Giants assistant GM and former Dodger GM Ned Colletti after opening day at Oracle Park. And Ned, Kipe said it, and he said it years ago, Giants baseball, torture. Uh, wow. I mean, what can you say about this one? It looked like they had added an insurance run when Brandon Belt homered into the arcade, and it was going to be a very nice, neat victory. Doval on to close the ninth, and he could not shut the door. Jazz Chisholm goes yard, forcing extras. Dubon gets picked off second in the 10th, but Austin Slater doubles into the corner, scoring Darren Ruff, and the Giants escape on opening day 6-5 with a win over the Marlins. What'd you think?
Wow, it was an exciting game. I mean, if you're the Giants or the Marlins, you've got ebbs and flows to your emotions certainly all day long. Giants look to be in a good spot, getting that insurance run up by a couple, but they play 9 innings for a reason, and the 37 outs are tough to get sometimes. But Giants pulled it out. It was an exciting game, at least from a neutral standpoint. It was an exciting game.
Man, what an exciting, brand of ball the Giants seemingly play. Multiple regimes, and yet, they play a lot of close games. And I think we talked about this when we talked earlier this month. If the Giants beat the Dodgers last year, Giants went 107-55. LA went 106-56. The biggest difference between the two clubs, LA was 500 in one-run games, and the Giants went 31-17 in one-run games. What's the key to winning one-run games? Is it as simple as bullpen, or how do you see it?
Well, it's more than the bullpen. I mean, without the bullpen, you don't have any chance to probably be in a one-run game. But you've got to be able to execute. And you saw a base running error there in the extras. That could have been costly without the double, and then Rupp coming all the way from first to score. You've got to be clean with your defense, and you've got to be clean with your pitching. And you've got to be able to execute. When you can win as many one-run games as the Giants did last year, that tells you how good they're playing and how really kind of focused they are at everything that they did last year. And I think that's the mark of a good team. And LA's got so much talent; they could afford to be in and around 500 with it, and still end up being right there with the Giants missing out by a game.
Let's talk about this game. There were so many interesting things about it. First of all, it started with the pomp and circumstance. And I don't know, you could probably speak to this better than I could, because you've been in different organizations. You've been around baseball. But I just think the Giants, you can be critical of the Giants for a number of different things. The one thing that they absolutely do, as well as any club in the game, is the kind of the pomp and the circumstance and the show around the game, and highlighting the veteran players, and highlighting their history and telling their story. And today, Brandon Belt, comes in from on a boat. He was the self-proclaimed captain down the stretch, and it's funny, Ned. I know you know Belt well. He has been a heavily criticized player during his tenure here, but last year he even though he spent a lot of time on the DL, he put it together. And he had his best statistical year in a lot of ways per at bat. And not only that, he kind of embraced this whole idea that he's the leader of the team, saying, "Yeah, I'm the straw that stirs the drink. I'm the captain." And he kind of leaned into it, and they've had a lot of fun with it. And man, they've gotten a lot of mileage out of it.
Well, to your first point, was in San Francisco for a long time, and I've been going back and forth from LA to there for 20-some, almost 30 years. And I can even remember early in my Cub days, we had opening day there in 1984, and I think Huey Lewis and the News performed the national anthem. And I mean, it was a big festival then too, even in Candlestick, which wasn't as festive a place certainly as Oracle Field.
Sure,
but they've always had a great way of celebrating their history, as you say. I think about all those days. I'd walk into Mike Murphy's office in the clubhouse, and Willie Mays be sitting in there. The great late Willie McCovey be sitting there. Orlando be sitting there, Gaylord Perry coming and going, Juan Marichal from time to time, and you see walking history, and they've celebrated as well as any organization that I've ever been around, and it's a tribute to their thought process, to their marketing, and how they respect the game and who came before them. As far as Brandon Belt goes, players, every year is a different year, and every team's culture is a different culture. You could have the same 26, 28 players this year, to start the season. 26 players, or in the old days, 25. Cultures will be different year to year. Players will be different year to year. And sometimes it takes a player a certain amount of time to really become as good as they're going to be, or kind of mature as a player. And Brandon Belt has always been, in my opinion, a dangerous player, a dangerous hitter. I can remember his rookie year, he hit a ball to center field out of the stadium at Dodger Stadium. And I thought, where were we? Did we see this guy? This guy, and he was a pitcher as well. Right. I thought, look, this is a good player, but he's embraced that role. You need that. You need that levity. I can't remember the last time I saw a current player throw out an opening day first pitch to the manager. I don't know if I've seen Sandy Koufax throw out a bunch of them, and I'm sure Juan Marichal and the Willies and Orlando from time to time. But to see a current player do it, but you know what? A great celebration. This man did not have a hit in spring training, and had a big single today and a home run today. I think it was the Giants' first walk-off win on opening day since Mike Krueger started a game back in '87. Good year for the Giants. And that's a long time to go without an opening day walk-off.
No question. Let's talk about this game because, these guys are pros and they play a lot of games. It was a 17-game Cactus League. I think Belt only played in a handful of games. But the Giants, I thought in the early part of this game, were pretty sloppy. It was not a stellar, sharp, look that they gave. Stallings, the catcher, who's really underrated, man. He's got a great arm, Gold Glove catcher, power hitter, hit one out today. But he picked off Darren Ruff in that first inning, yes. And it was funny. I'm watching that first inning, and I'm thinking, you know what? This is the Giant team that I saw last year. They work pitchers. They get guys on base. They get into your bullpen, and they were doing that. And it looked like they were going to get on the board. And then Stallings picks Ruff off second base, and it wasn't all that close.
No, you've got to, as I said, even in one-run games or even at any part of the game, you've got to play clean with your game. And you cannot lose base runners. It's tough enough to get a base runner. When you get a base runner in scoring position, you've got to be able to cash that in. And Darren probably trying to get a little secondary lead, trying to get just a little bit extra there, ended up too far off and ended up costing him an out and taking a runner from scoring position off the field. So, you've got to be clean with it. I think every team is going to struggle a little bit out of the gate here to kind of get their bearings. Spring training, people have been saying for years, it's way too long. Well, there's a purpose to it, including getting your pitchers ready, getting them stretched out for a regular season, but also to get everybody in a rhythm to play. This is a hard game. It's, players are on their feet. Some people may laugh at this, but they're on their feet for an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. And you got to get your rhythm, and you got to really get the feel for it. It's going to take teams a little while to get there. And the Giants were fortunate today that they ended up prevailing at the very end.
People filling up the chat. We've got our first donation here. Carol Tiso says she donates $4.99 for this comment. She says, so nice to see you on after the game. Reminds me of listening to the late Ralph Barbieri as we drove home. Thank you. Well, Carol, thank you. And thanks for listening. And you can catch us here in post game throughout definitely during the weekday night games. And of course, I'll try to do as many post games as possible just because everybody knows I'll be watching all of these games this year because I'm that kind of a Giants fan. Ned, I wanted to ask you also what you thought of Logan Webb today. And do you think of Logan Webb? And, it's something a buddy of mine said this the other day, and I thought, you might be a little too over your skis on the Giants. But the guy said, you know what? I think it's going to be a great year for the Giants. I'm like, well, last year was a pretty good year. And he's like, yeah, but, I think they're going to get some national acclaim. He goes, I think Joey Bart's going to win the Rookie of the Year. And I think Logan Webb's going to win the National League Cy Young Award. And I kind of scoffed. But, man, after watching what Webb did to the Dodgers in October, watching what he did in the second half of the year, Ned, and then looking at him today, hopefully that play at first, he just maybe tweaked the ankle or maybe the knee. He obviously stayed in the game, so it couldn't have been too serious. But that was kind of a hold your breath moment right there for the Giants. But what'd you think of Webb's performance? It seemed like he kind of settled in.
Well, I've had a lot of respect for him. As I watch him pitch, there's some pitchers, not a lot, maybe a 20-25% range of the whole entire starting rotation all the way throughout the game, who, if you pay attention, they can teach you about pitching. They can teach you about reading a swing. They can teach you about changing speeds. They can teach you about running a ball in, running a ball away, changing speeds away. And Webb is one of those guys. He can get it up there a little bit, but he really knows how to pitch. And seeing him a bunch of times last year against LA, you get a feel that this guy, if he doesn't have something working, he still has enough stuff to get through it until he can either get back to getting his full repertoire back or not even use a certain pitch. But he does know how to pitch. And I think we saw today, he worked the ball on the outer half of the plate. And then if somebody offered at it, the next one, he was going to offer it a couple inches further outside. Not everybody can do that. It's one thing to be able to execute the pitch. It's another thing to be able to think about what you just saw, put it in your mind, and recalibrate, reset, and get back after it. I don't know if he's going to win the Cy Young. I mean, it's one start. But this kid can pitch, and he's got great competitiveness to him. First time he's ever started on opening day. Started those big games against LA last year in the postseason and pitched brilliantly after a long season for him. He had 148 innings in the regular season last year, quite a bit for somebody at his age, so to speak, in the big leagues. But I think this kid has got a chance to be one of the best pitchers in the game. I love that he pitches. He doesn't overpower you. He's got enough fastball to use it and to really kind of pitch off it. But he's also somebody that can pitch off some other pitches too, because he's got command of them. When you got command of them and you can think, and you can execute, that's a pretty good combination.
Man, it really shows how it's a process too, because, I can remember, Tom Glavine and John Smoltz breaking into the big leagues, and they got in the late 80s, they got knocked around. I mean, talking about Hall of Fame pitchers. Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux got knocked around. Logan Webb, I think it was 2 years ago in September. I'm watching him. He's getting ripped. I couldn't get out of the fifth, wasting all kinds of pitches. But what he's got, Ned, is he's got mid-90s, maybe a tad beneath, but there's guys all throughout the minor leagues who throw harder than this guy. But what this guy has is sink. So he's got natural movement and sink on all of his pitches and pretty good command. And that ramps up 93, 94. Seems like when he needs a ground ball, he gets the ground ball. You kind of mentioned it. He's kind of learned how to pitch. He's evolved. It just kind of goes to show that, everything's not at first blush, as you've told me and taught me through the years. There's a lot of nuance to the development side of the game. And it would have been easy for the Giants to just go, you know what? This guy's getting ripped in September. He's a young kid, but we got a bunch of other guys as well. We'll trade him. No, they didn't. They kept him. Now the regime changed. New regime came in. The new regime could have cleared house on him. Didn't. Kept him. And look what they have now. He's undoubtedly the ace of the staff and kind of an anchor. He's the youngest starter in their rotation and easily the anchor of their staff.
Well, the Giants did something that is really hard to do in sport, and that's be patient. But if you know who your players are, and you know how they think, and you know how they're able to execute, and you know if they have a curiosity for their craft and are willing to get better and better and better, you've got to be patient with it. Because if you believe in the talent and you believe in the soul of the player and how they approach things, that's how players end up pitching or playing for one team and they get traded early on. And next thing you know, they're starring for somebody else. Teams got to be patient. Giants were ultra patient with him, and it's paying off. And your point early in your last statement about him being able to keep the ball down, that is so valuable. And to change speeds and to really keep the ball down. Hitters want to hit, and if you keep the ball moving to the outside part of the plate, which it does masterfully, and then you throw them something that's over the middle of the plate, but it's also down and over the middle of the plate, they're going to go for it. And if you got a good infield defense, you're going to turn double plays, you're going to get ground ball outs, you're going to get out of innings. So he's got a great feel for what he does, and I think the best is still yet to come for him. I think every game he looks like one of those guys that every game he's out there, he's learning something and taking mental notes as to how he's going to approach somebody later on.
We got more to get to, and obviously a lot of points in this game. It's funny about a baseball game. There's a million talking points in almost every game, and we've got a lot to get to. But Kyle on the chat says, Colletti with the flex background. Ned, you got some serious baseballs going on back there.
Well, I've been around
Do I dare ask? Like, are those game balls? Are those? I mean, obviously, you've accumulated a number of things through your career.
Different guys I've met through 40 years, friendships, and some are Hall of Fame types, some are personal Hall of Fame types. People that I have the ultimate respect for as athletes and as baseball players. And I'm not a big collector. A lot of them were just gifts that Murph gave me, or Mitch Poole in L.A., or Yosh Kawano a million years ago back in Chicago, my hometown. But yeah, it's kind of nice. I'm not a big art guy, so it's kind of better to have pictures on the wall.
Oh, it's really cool. The man cave. Let's get to the bottom of the third in this game, because this I thought was an interesting point in the game. Duggar grounds out to start the inning. Joey Bart comes up. Joey Bart had a really good spring, Ned. He was 8 for 22, 364 is what he hit, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs. He struck out 8 times. He walked twice. I bring that up because the Giants kind of felt like he struck out too much last year and didn't walk enough. So that was kind of a point of interest. Krueger on the broadcast, if you heard it, said that he really demonstrated in spring an improved overall strike zone, better strike zone discipline than he had a year ago. And sure enough, Bart draws the walk. So now you get a 1-out situation. Bart's on first. Yaz made an out, little put out to shortstop. And then so you got Brandon Belt up there. He's got he's a hitter that gets shifted on consistently. And people are always begging, is he going to lay one down? Is he going to go the other way? Well, he did. He bunted it towards the third base side. It was a big bunt. I think it landed almost on the dirt in the infield. And then the throw to first got away from the first baseman. And Joey Wendell threw it away. Cooper couldn't handle it. And Bart came all the way around to score. And that was the Giants' first run. Really 2 things. One, it was, highlights Bart's improved batting eye at the plate. And that's going to help him. But it also kind of showed that maybe Belt's a little bit more open-minded to how he wants to attack the shift this year. What did you think of the play? And would you like to see, if you're up in your suite, you're the GM of this team, you want to see your power hitter in a lineup that doesn't have a lot of power, you want to see him lay one down with 2 outs, or you want to see him, get towards the end of the knob and hit one out?
Well, you've got to trust your hitter, his intellect for the situation. I'm surprised more hitters, especially left-handed hitters that get shifted against, don't do that. I think if people complain about the shift and things like that, well, there's one way to really stop it, and that's go the other way with it. I don't think anybody would have ever shifted against the great Tony Gwynn, right? I mean, it'd be impossible. He'd be hitting almost 500 a year and almost 400 a year.
Wade Boggs or somebody like that.
I mean, and so if hitters can put defense on the move and make defenses think as well, it's a great attribute to be able to have. And I think it was a smart play, obviously. And I think when you go back to Joey Bart for a second, he's got all sorts of pressure on him this year. You got Buster Posey, going home, which is Hall of Fame career, tremendous catcher and World Series champion multiple times over. And he's sitting in that seat right now. He's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot to kind of really gain every day that he's out there. He's going to, like I said about Logan Webb, he's going to learn every day. And to see what he did today, first major league home run, and to catch a game that he caught, and to be able to do what he did on the base paths and everything else, that's a good day for him. One little sidelight, I always wanted either new players to the organization and team or young players to be able to contribute to a win as soon as possible. Because once they do that, they start to get that confidence and they start to feel like they belong. This is a great clubhouse, San Francisco. We know how, they've always had that rhythm to them and that great soulfulness to being together. And I always knew it, whether I was with them or whether I was GMing against them. So you've got a good group of people. But for a guy like Joey Bart to be able to contribute right away, made a nice play too on a swinging bunt in front of the plate early in the game. Those types of things give him confidence. Austin Slater getting a big hit to finish that game off. Those players look for that. I was around Barry for a long time, and greatest player I've ever seen on a daily basis, position player.
He was there
He's
today, by the way. He was in the
Yeah, I
house.
saw him. He looked great. Was around him a long time. There were days that I would see him, but he might have not homered for a week or 10 days. Wasn't often, but once in a while, and you could almost see him. Am I ever going to be able to do this again? And so
Wow.
it's a confidence game. They've all got it. It all kind of comes and goes for everyone. The greatest of the greats, far less than anybody else. But I think when you have players that contribute early in the season, get key outs from the mound, make a play in the field, get a big hit your first home run, double down the left field line to win a walk-off game that you thought you were close to winning, and then you end up falling back and coming back and tying it, and then having a runner thrown out, trying to figure out if he's going from second or third or what he's going to do on a fly ball to right, all these different things, and then you're able to capitalize and do it. I think when teams have multiple players that start to get in that rhythm and start to feel good about what they're doing, that's how teams get off to good starts.
Is opening day, and I've wanted to ask you this one for years, and I may have asked you and I just forget. Is it one of 162, or is there importance to opening day? I hear guys say the ninth inning is a different inning, and I believe that. Is game one just one of 162, or is it somehow, do people in the game view it as meaningful? I know for a lot of teams, Ned, I remember Kipe used to talk for years about, the mistake at the lake, old Cleveland Municipal Stadium, 72,000 on opening day, and then 5,500 the rest of the year. But I mean, is opening day, does it matter to the GM? Does it matter to the manager? Does it matter to the players other than game 68 or game 142 or game 123? Or is it different because it's the opener and it's like a tone setting thing?
Well, I think it's all of those things. I think to me, it's always got a different feel to it. Opening day always has a different feel to it than any other day of the year. There's only one opening day for your team, and it does have that uniqueness to it. I think also, as far as when you come out of spring training, especially a shortened spring training, and I was in a shortened one back in, I guess it was what, 94 or 95, my first year with the Giants, and you're looking to get that momentum. You're looking to get started. You're looking to get that first win. Guys are looking to get their first hit. And so to be able to have a good first game is important. You don't want to go 0-1. Yeah, it's only 1 of 162. That is a fact. But you don't want to go 0-1 and then next day you're going 0-2. And now suddenly, you're starting to feel a little bit different. But if you can get off to a good start and play well in your opener and win that game, it's always a good feeling. It doesn't necessarily foretell what is coming down the road. A lot of teams I were on lost opening day. I was there when the ballpark opened. Kevin Elster hit 3 home runs. I think we lost the first 6 games of the season.
It's just everybody walked out of the yard that day going, "This is a bandbox."
Oh yeah,
It's a bandbox.
If you look back, I think the Giants lost 3 games to the Dodgers and went 0-6 to start the season.
They're never going to win here. Move back to Candlestick.
And I think they won 100 games. I think that might be the year that they won 100 games. So, it's a little bit of foreshadowing. It's not a lot, but you always want your players to feel good about the day and to feel confident and try and get the wheel to turn in the right direction. So for that, it's got the value. Is it going to mean, I can't even tell you who won last year's opening day for the Dodgers or the Giants, but yet there they were in the 162nd game, figuring out who was going to win 107, who was going to win 106. So, it's got bearing to it. But again, it is one of the entire marathon of yet to come.
You're talking about the 2000 Giants, and I do remember that year one of the ballpark. That was one of the best lineups you and Brian ever built. That lineup had Jeff Kent, Barry Bonds, and Ellis Burks, and others. JT Snow, Rich Aurelia, Billy Miller. There were other guys on that team, and they were it was a hell of a team. But Bonds, Kent, and Burks, and I believe that team scored over 900 runs And all those years where they had struggled offensively, they're like, the ballpark. I'm like, hey, folks, year one of this ballpark, the team that Brian and Ned built won 100 games, or it might have been 97. I forget how many wins in 2000, but it was an awesome offensive team that scored 900 plus runs. So, it was an incredible. What do you remember? What Burks did for that lineup? Because I think he hit 340, if I'm not mistaken, and drove in 90. I mean, he had an incredible year.
Yeah, we kept adding. We added players that had talent. We also had added players that knew how to win, or a lot of guys that really kind of had a chip on their shoulder. You think about J.T. Snow, traded by Anaheim after one off year. Richie Aurier, really never having a chance in Texas before he came to the Dodgers. Billy Miller always played like every day was going to be his last. One of my dearest friends in the game, and somebody who played it to the utmost. But maybe no greater example than Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent had been with the Mets, with Toronto, with the Mets, with Cleveland, and kind of was in the best years maybe a 2080 guy, and somebody who came to San Francisco in '97. That winter, Brian made that deal with Cleveland in '96 of November of '96, and traded Matty Williams, who was one of the great Giants of all time, and caught a lot of heat for it. But Jeff Kent continually got better, and if you remember that year, I think the team was in and around 500 halfway through the season, and there was a doubleheader against Colorado at, I think it was then Pac Bell, and Jeff Kent came in that day really sick. Stan Conti gave him intravenous this and that, and we were shocked he was going to play, but he played, and he played both games, and from that moment on, the team started to take off. And in November of that season, got beaten in the playoffs. In November of that season, Jeff Kent was named as the most valuable player of the National League. And that also helped our organization and our club, because the guy who expected to win it was number 25.
Sure.
And so suddenly now you had great competition between a 3-hitter and a 4-hitter, a left-handed hitter and a right-handed hitter. And suddenly now everything started to get better and better and better. And a couple years later, teams in the World Series. But I think that competition helped fuel the team. And the players on that team, including Ellis and Jeff and Richie and Billy and JT, a lot of guys who were really great gamers, as they would say.
Yeah.
Changed the organization, changed the future of the franchise in so many different ways. The ballpark, no doubt. Changed the city and its feel for baseball and its passion for the team remarkably. But the team picked it up and started to win and compete every day. Dusty, great manager, one of those guys that competed every single day, and his players took the lead from him. A lot of guys we traded for or signed as free agents, they had that spark and that headway about. Kirk Reeder, one of the best,
great competitor.
Think about his career before he got there.
Yeah, that was a hell of a trade by Brian to bring him over.
Yeah. All these guys, I mean, they were tremendous. Robbie Dunn, on and on and on. It's one of my favorite teams, that group, that era of players, because of how they went about it and how they went about their daily work and how much it meant for them to win. And they had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, which I love, because that's probably half of my DNA and probably half of Brian's DNA too.
Right.
Is going after it and having people who denied you opportunity before saying, okay, why don't you sit back and watch, see what it goes, But a lot of good players on that team. I loved Ellis Burks. What
a hitter. And, he'd come into the bar. I was doing the post-game shows at Restaurant 24 at the time. Yeah. So they had like 19 different names since, but he used to come in and have dinner. And, I'd be doing the post-game show and he'd raise a beer. Sometimes he'd buy us a shot, me and the producer. And it was just very, very cool. And we got to know him throughout that year. Yeah. And, and then he would come in, he'd have a few words for us every single day. And it was very cool. Carol asks, and this is an interesting question. She says, Doval's looked jittery since he hurt Justin Turner last year. What do you think of that? Can a young pitcher carry a high profile failure or high profile moment from one season into the next? What do you think?
I think they can. I don't know that they can be successful if they can. I don't know if he does or he doesn't.
Right.
But, you've seen there's a lot of different things that go on. Whether it's a pitcher losing command of a fastball, giving up a home run, losing games late, or hitters that make have a bad at bat in a key spot, or make a fielding error, or a base running error. It's a game of failure, as people say, but it's a game that you have to get over that failure, and you have to just move on. You've got to have a short memory. Closers to me, and I've been around a lot of great ones. I was around Eckersley early in his, middle of his career, really after Cleveland and Boston, and then Lee Smith for a number of years, and Goose Gossage for a long time, and Robbie Nen, and on, and Kenley Jansen, and Brian Wilson we had in L.A.
Roberto Hernandez.
Yeah, Roberto Hernandez, Rod Beck, all these guys. Most of them were not drafted as closers. Most of them develop into it. And they develop into it because they've got an out pitch or two, and some three, but they've got an out pitch that is really tough for a hitter to handle. But more than that, they are at least equal to that. They have the courage to pitch that inning, and they don't get fazed by anything. I had Goose Gossage with me in Chicago near the end of his career. This stuff wasn't like it was when he was throwing 2 or 3 innings a night for the Yankees and one of the dominant relief pitchers of that era on World Series teams. It wasn't like that. But his courage to do it always stayed. And I remember a game in Pittsburgh, he blew a game late. And he came into the locker room and everybody was wondering, how is he going to handle all this? And he said, gentlemen, wasn't the first time, won't be the last. I'll be back tomorrow. And that's what he had to do. And that's what everybody has to do. If you're gonna compete, closers have great stuff, courage, and really the intestinal fortitude to get those outs at that point in the game. But also, they have very, very short memories.
Stephen Copland 8 says, what's the GM do during the game? I mean, heck, my kid was watching Moneyball the other day and he's like, Billy Bean, you used to leave the stadium during the game, Dad? I'm like, yeah, actually, I kind of know Billy a little bit. Billy liked to work out during the game. I think Farhan is kind of a Billy disciple. I think if you're looking for Farhan in a suite during the game, you're probably not going to find him, but you might see him on a treadmill in the clubhouse. Did you do the same thing as an assistant GM that you did when you were the GM? And do you do the same? Does the average GM do the same thing every game? Or is it like, hey, you know what? Today I'm going to watch it here. Tomorrow I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, I'm going to mix it up. And do you do anything? Do you have a meaningful role during the 9 innings?
Well, assistant GM there, GM, down south. And every game was important. Every game, you get ready for that first.
You're grinding.
Ready for it, yeah. And I would, in tough situations, I would get up. I would pace a little bit in the booth. I never worked out. I mean, if you saw me, I haven't worked out before or since. But it's
you were in a suit.
No.
You weren't in sweats. You weren't walking around in sweats.
No, never sweats. In San Francisco, it was. In the summertime, on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon, it was a Tommy Bahama shirt.
Right.
And during the week at night, or even in the summer at night, it was a leather jacket and a sweater. And both Sabes and I, were probably looked like we came out of the same store, But it was, we took it seriously, and we'd have some conversation during the games. And I did the same thing in LA, where I would have some conversation with my inner circle if I was sitting next to him and talk about a little situation here or there. There's not a whole lot of chatter that goes on. It's a quiet booth for the most part. And when I would get into a tough situation in LA, I would get to the back of the booth and I'd pace a little bit. I've left the ballpark maybe 2 times. In Colorado, both times. Coors Field, tough place to play, almost like a arena football.
Sabian hated going to Denver, man.
Oh yeah, I used to have to always go. And so sometimes I would get out and I would walk around the perimeter of the ballpark on the outside, and I could tell by the crowd noise how we were doing. If there was a lot of cheering going on, I thought we'd just blown the lead. If it was quiet, I'd say, hey, you know what? We got a shot. And I would keep doing it. And in Arizona, Arizona's also a place that's good hitters ballpark, great batter's eye. In Arizona, you had the booths and the GM booth, visiting GM booth, and you'd walk down the hall and into their offices. The office doors were locked, but you had like 3 steps that you could go, and it was a little bit of a place of hiding where nobody knew you were there. You could just sit there and again listen to the crowd noise and hope that your pitcher could make a pitch and get out of a certain spot. But that was it. I watched every game, and every pitch because
You ever sit with the opposing GM, Ned? You ever sit with an opposing GM in like maybe late June or July when you guys are
no, we'd
maybe
always stop
cooking
by.
trades? No.
No, we stop by. If we had a question or something like that, we try and do it ahead of a game. Nobody really wants to get into those types of conversations inside a game. I can remember though back in '97, we're talking about JT Snow a little bit, and Billy Bavasi, who is a great friend to
Angels
Sadie
GM, former
and
Angels GM.
myself, where the Angels are playing in Candlestick, and I think you can look this up. We're playing in Candlestick, and we had just acquired JT. And Billy comes in and says, "How's JT doing?" And this and that. I wish him well and all that. And as he's standing there, JT hits one out. And Billy looks at us and he goes, "I'm done, boys." And he walks out of the field.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I mean,
you say take Alan Watson and Fausto Macy with you. That's what you guys traded for.
That's why you don't really visit at that point in time. I would sit in LA with my hands in front of my face and in front of my mouth a lot. Because in case I uttered something that was something I would be ashamed of uttering, I didn't want the TV camera picking
the close up on TV.
Yeah, so if people saw me sitting with my hands in front of my mouth, there's a chance that I was maybe prone at that minute to say something out loud and maybe loudly, but not often, but it happened from time to time.
Back to today's game, I thought one guy who really opened my eyes today, and he opened my eyes a lot last year, but give me your thoughts on Thairo Estrada. Not only, Aguiar had that ground ball top of the 4th inning, and Estrada makes a 360 spin and throws out the play. It was an excellent play. He also made another play where he charged it, real slow roller, made a great glove hand, throw hand switch, and then he hit one out. I don't have it in front of me, but I could have sworn that Thairo Estrada at some point in his lineage as a player was considered pretty highly within that Yankee farm system. I thought it was one of Farhan's better additions last year. This kid basically took Mauricio Dubon and kind of guaranteed that he would finish the rest of the year in AAA. We'll get to Dubon at some point in that gaff later, but give me your thoughts on Estrada, because if there's one guy on this team outside of Joey Bart that I could see really busting out and helping this offense that I hadn't necessarily factored in, it's probably Thairo.
He played really well today, and even last year. I mean, he was somebody that I hadn't seen before. I can remember watching him last year, going, "This kid can play a little bit." He's got a calm pulse for situations. The game doesn't get too fast for him. It seems like he can manage any anxiety or manage the moment, the time and place of where he's at, and that's not always easy to do for anybody. But he made 2 great plays today, and of course, the home run late in the game was a key thing. But he's a good player. Your middle of the diamond players have got to be of that caliber. There's no way around it. It's like pitching. If you can't pitch, you can't win. If the middle of your infield and your center fielder and your catcher are not really good defensive players, you're going to be chasing that scoreboard because of their inability to turn a double play or make a couple plays like he made today. Those plays he made today in this type of game we talked about. So, what's the success of teams that win 1-run games? Well, it's having a middle infielder like that. That's also part of it. And so I think, he's got a chance to be a really good player, steady player. I haven't seen him a whole lot, but I've seen him enough to know that when I see his name in a lineup, I know that this guy knows what he's doing, and how he executes, we'll have to wait and see. But it's been impressive when I've seen him. He's going to be a key guy for this team.
No doubt. And he can play, he can play short, he can play second, he can play third. He's a pretty decent glove. He can play the outfield, and he's got a little thunder. He's got a little thunder in his wrist. Back to Joey Bart, because I thought Bart was interesting from the standpoint of he came up last year And he struggled, struck out too much, didn't walk enough, and they sent him back down. And he didn't hit the ball. I mean, he's got a lot of bat speed, and if you look at the kid, and he's big kid, strong. Hit the ball out to middle of the bleachers today, and it looked like a 2-iron. They always say, Ned, scouts always say, oh, power is the last thing to come. And this kid, you could see the bat speed, and you looking at him going, oh yeah, this guy's going to hit 25 home runs. But then he didn't hit any when he came up last year. And you started to wonder, we could see he's got power, but is he going to be a home run hitter? Is he just going to be a hard contact line drive hitter? What do you see with Joey Bart? Because now, as you mentioned, he's a key guy for them, trying to replace Buster, trying to run the staff, trying to and it'll be, to me, one of the interesting things will be how Gabe, splits up the catching, between Casale, who's kind of bulked up. He's a lot stronger this year, but he also is a challenged offensive player historically throughout his career. That's the nice way of saying it. But what'd you see with Bart? Because he hit that thing today. I don't know what the exit velocity was, but man, it got out and it looked real easy.
Well, here's how I typically evaluate. I evaluate little by little by little by little. This was one day, opening day, big day. You're the starting catcher. You're sitting where Buster Posey did. And so it's a big day for him in a number of ways. How does he handle it? I thought he handled it great. I think the game of baseball is so difficult, and that position is so challenging and so difficult. And it's your manager on the field that, for me, it's too early to tell. High pick, first round pick, all that, and all the acclaim has done nothing, in my opinion, to discount anything that people have thought he could be. But whether he gets there today or a month from today or a year from today or by October, time will tell. To me, evaluation is hard to do in a moment. It takes me a while. I had every day. I could watch a player almost every day play, and I'll gain information. I'll see how he adjusts to pitching. Because as my dear friend Vance Lovelace would say, a great scout, he'd say, once the ink gets around the league, we'll see how the hitters adjust. In other words, once the scouting reports start circulating and people start watching video and seeing how people adjust to different things. I mean, it's the opposite of Webb in that, he's doing the same thing versus the hitters. So time will tell how it goes. A lot of good things he did today, no doubt. He's got to be very pleased with what he did. But it's going to be a grind for him, too. When this season ends, whenever it ends for him, tell you what, he will probably not recognize or realize how much he's learned this year, but it'll be a massive education for him.
It's interesting. You just hit on something that I think is really interesting, and that's the advanced scouting reports. You've been a GM and you've deployed scouts around ballparks. You've got guys watching college games. You got guys watching international games. You got guys watching high school games. You have people watching certain regions of the country. And then you have your advanced scouts who are watching major league games. And I'm just kind of wondering, could you take a guy who's scouting college and make him your advanced scout? Could you take a guy who's your advanced scout and go tell him, go look at South Carolina, Georgia tonight? Or if somebody tells you I'm an advanced scout, and then another guy comes in and says, I'm the, Tigers Southeast region scout. Do you in your head know that the advanced scout is held in higher regard? Like, you're the smartest scouts that you and Brian had. Did you want them looking at college kids and high school kids and prospects for the draft? Or were they looking at the Rockies for your series next week or the Dodgers for a series next week? Or is it a mix?
I don't think that question has one answer to it. I think
Right.
it's different. It's different for everybody. What I would look for in scouts was their area of expertise and what they were really good at. Some scouts are great at pitching. Some scouts are great at hitting. Some scouts are great at figuring out a manager's tendency in the opposition's dugout. Everybody's got one strength at least, some 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, could you deploy somebody in a variety of roles? Absolutely. When you think about the postseason, every pro scout I had advanced one or two teams for the postseason. We were in it a lot in San Francisco and LA. We were blessed with good teams, blessed in both places to be always in the race. I think I had two teams under 500 in my last 23, 24 years. So we were always in it. So you took your pro scouts and you would take an amateur scout or two and give them the chance to advance a team for 2 or 3 weeks getting into the postseason. And that's a major role. What you need to be able to do with that is obviously know the players, but also almost know how players think. And that takes time to cultivate that. A good advanced scout will watch how a catcher sets up. Does the catcher give away a breaking ball? Does a catcher give away a pickoff attempt? Does a catcher give away anything? And you've got to see that. And you've got to see how pitchers adjust. And if pitchers are tipping a pitch. There's some players that are experts at it. Moves his hand a little bit. Years ago, a great pitcher, I'm not going to give you the name, but a great pitcher in his glove hand, whenever he threw a curveball, would take the index finger out of the glove and rest it on the outside of the glove. I mean, he didn't even know he was doing it. Team started to pick it up, and then he changed. Never pitched for a team that I worked for, but one of the great pitchers back in the 80s and the early 90s. So you're looking for all of that. You're looking for tendencies. And you're looking to see if a good hitter is going to adjust in the batter's box in the middle of an at-bat, in a different part of the game, in a different situation in the game. These are all things you need to know. And an advanced scout not only needs to be able to see it, recognize it, chronicle it, but also needs to be able to put it into a form of communication that is succinct. Players, managers, coaches don't have hours to go over reports.
Right.
You play every day. I mean, you're a great NFL guy and know the game inside out. You got a week between games. You can really kind of dissect a lot of different things. But in baseball, I mean, they've got a game tomorrow, and so it keeps right on turning. So you have to not only know what you're talking about, but really be succinct in how you discuss it. And I think it's important. To me, it's almost like teaching. Your scouts, and this is tough to find scouts that can do this on a continual basis. Your scouts almost need to know what the manager is looking for, what the coaches are looking for, what some of the players are looking for, especially in the postseason. How do they think? If you just have one way of delivering it to 26 players on your postseason roster, some are going to get it, some aren't going to get it, some are going to think you're saying something you're not saying. That's just life. You've got to be able to kind of break it down for the individual and to figure it out that way. But the value of those positions and those people, whether it's advanced or the area scout in the southeast part of the country, or a major league scout, or a minor league scout, or a Latin American scout, or an Asian scout, all those things, they're all very vital, along with everything else that you compile, all the information. One other thing about scouting too is I never wanted people who would agree with me. And if I thought they were agreeing with me too often, I would challenge their thought process by not agreeing with them, even if I believed what they were saying in this particular instance, to see how they really felt.
How deep their conviction was.
Yes, exactly. There was one, and I made a major deal with the Red Sox years ago. And the player, the scout that knew the Red Sox inside and out, I called him 4 times in a 24-hour period. And I think the third time through, he said, "Hey, boss, you realize you called me twice on this player today?" I says, "Yeah. You realize every time I ask you a question, you kind of change the tone of your voice? I got to know really how you feel. You can't be in the middle on this." And, so you've got to know it. And whenever you're in a leadership role in sport, you have to scout everybody. You don't just scout players.
You got to filter everybody.
You got to
filter everybody.
Yep. You scout other GMs, other managers, other coaches, players, their minor league system. You scout anybody and everybody, because that's how you learn. If you pay attention, every day you're going to learn a lot. And Joey Bart, that's going back to that point. Joey Bart's going to learn so much this year. I mean, incredible amount of knowledge is going to be coming his way on a daily basis, all sorts of time.
I've heard that the late Pat Dobson was an incredible advanced scout. I've heard people say that Steve Balboni, who Sabes leaned on, was a hell of a scout. You've probably seen, did you ever see, I mean, you probably from being the Dodger GM, you've probably seen this hour on MLB Network 100 times. It's called Only in Hollywood. And it's basically about the 88 Dodgers. I don't know if you saw that hour.
I know the story.
Yeah, you know the story. It's an incredible thing. And Kirk Gibson in the Eckersley game 1 of the World Series at bat, banged up knee, groin pull, hammy, quad. He had it all at that point. He was almost totally useless, just an arm swinger, wasn't going to play at all, wasn't in the dugout. And then Mike Davis draws the walk. Lasorda gets him out of the tunnel. The rest is history. It's one of the greatest moments in baseball history. But in that hour, it shows Gibson talked about what he did pregame, and he's going through the scouting report. And he said, Eckersley gets to 3-2. He's going to throw you a backdoor slider. And so
Mel Didier was a scout. Yep.
He claims that he was visualizing those words on the paper, and he stepped out of the batter's box, kind of regrouped, and said to himself, sure as you're sitting here, you're going to throw me that backdoor slider, and I'm going to be ready for it. And he jumped on it. I mean, he pounced on it like, Bobby Thompson against Ralph Branca in the 50, he was looking for that pitch and hit that pitch into the bleachers. But to me, what was impressive was the conviction that Kirk Gibson had for the scouting report written by some scout. Now, I'm just kind of wondering, do you think he knew who that scout was? It probably was somebody who did their advanced work. Do you think he had a belief in that person or just in the process? Because man, that's as big a moment as in baseball history. And really, if you hear Kirk talk about it, he wouldn't have been prepared for that moment without the advanced scouts' very detailed, intricate, but concise scouting report, as you kind of stated.
I think the scout was Mel Didier, who had been around a long time, and knowing how he would have conversations. I mean, he always spoke with conviction. And I think when you think about the postseason, you're an advanced scout, especially when you get into the World Series. You've been getting reports since maybe for years, but certainly probably since April of that year. And I think it's things that you remember. And when somebody is as precise as that report was, he goes 3-2. Sure as I'm sitting here, you're going to get a backdoor slider. It's not like most of the time, you're going to get something off speed, maybe on the outer half. It wasn't that kind of report. It was specific to the count. It was specific to the location. It was specific to the type of pitch. And again, I said a couple minutes ago, you've got to be succinct. You've got to be clear with your report, and you've got to be succinct with it. And then you've got a chance to execute it. Now, that doesn't mean that Eckersley doesn't run a slider in that case, in that one little situation, in on his hands. Because if he runs that pitch in on his hands, he's going to either foul it off or miss it. But he was right on with it. And
unbelievable.
Road history.
Yeah. Back to today's game, I thought something that was interesting. So the Marlins go to the pen in the 6th, or in the bottom of the 6th. They bring in Tanner Scott, a left-hander. This guy comes in, throws. I never even heard of Tanner Scott. He's throwing nasty slider after nasty slider after nasty slider. We're probably 6 or 7 pitches in. And then all of a sudden, here comes a 98-mile-an-hour fastball from a left-hander. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, the game, first of all, I would hate to be a big league hitter. There's so many good pitchers. These guys are so damn good. It's incredible. But a guy that would throw slider, and he had a good one. You remember that that was the inning where Slater K'd on 3 nasty sliders in a row, pinch hitting for Jock Peterson. I want to ask you about that as well. And then Brandon Crawford grounded out weakly to Chisholm, and then Flores grounded out weakly to Chisholm, and then Marlins were back in the dugout. But isn't that interesting, Ned? I mean, you've got these guys that the guy's throwing slider. I mean, literally 7, 8 pitches in before we see the fastball, and he's throwing 98. So, I mean, what do pitchers pitch differently? I mean, the stuff is off the charts. I mean, that's closer like stuff. That was impressive that they have a guy like that who's not their closer, who's got that kind of an arm.
Well, in time, you never know. He may end up being.
Yeah.
But I think, the report on him is probably, he can bring it in about 98. So if you're sitting 98 and you got a slider coming, the adjustment is a tough one. Okay. And so the slider will, because it's got such movement to it and spin to it, it's gonna slow down your bat a little bit. Okay. It's just gonna slow you down just enough. And then you got 98, you got to catch up to 98, and you're not necessarily expecting it. You might be looking for it, but you've got a split second to make up your mind what you're seeing and what you're going to do with it. Not enough time to think, only enough time to react. One day take a book and hold a book out and drop a book. From the time it leaves your hand till the time you hear it hit the floor, that's how much time a hitter's got to recognize a pitch. Okay, so it's rapid. But you got somebody with a good slider that can throw it for a swing and miss or throw it for a strike, and then you can bring in that that power stuff at the end of it. You're gonna get a lot of outs because most guys are not going to be able to figure that out or catch up to it after you've slowed their bat down. And so the thought process was probably pretty decent. I think a good pitcher, especially somebody that's going to only pitch in situations, has got to change how they do things too. If that becomes a pattern, people are going to be sitting on it, looking for it and figuring it out. Hitters are great. Coaches are great. They look at tendency. They look at repetitive performance. But, impressive that he could do that. But, you never know. Again, we may end up talking about him in a year or two as somebody that's wrapping games up.
He's nasty. He is nasty. What'd you think of Kapler's decision to pull Jock Peterson there? I guess that's something that Giants fans are going to have to get used to. Huh? Is Jock just fodder against lefties? Is that the issue? Or is he truly just a guy who hits righties? And you think because I mean that's only the 6th inning, and he is one of the bigger thumper guys they have in their lineup. Were you surprised that he yanked him there for the lefty?
Yes and no. Maybe in an earlier day, probably let your starting left fielder hit. I was there when we drafted Jock. I've known Jock his whole professional career, and he's somebody in the month of October where he is difficult to get out no matter what side you're throwing from. A little more vulnerable regular season versus left-handers and certain types of left-handers. So it's one of those moves. I think you'll see it a lot. I think you'll see a lot of different moves. You probably saw a lot of that last year too in different situations. I think that's what players can expect, and that's what fans can expect, and so everybody can expect who pays attention to almost every team in the game. You're going to see a lot of pinch hitting early in the games, especially for the month of April. I think when you've got 28 players, some of them are going to be more pitcher oriented because of the shortened spring training and 17 games in the spring. But I think that managers got to manage games to make sure they don't run up players. We've talked about players with versatility, can play the infield and the outfield. Those players are more and more valuable each and every year. But I think you'll see hitters pinch hit for early in games. I think that's just the way people think today.
The Giants had the best pen in the game last year. It was unbelievable. They went to, in the 6th inning, we saw Logan Webb start to get hit kind of hard. There was some loud contact, but he got out of it. Then the leadoff hitter gets on in the 7th, and Kapler, you're out of the game. And he went to Dominic Leone. Leone's been unbelievable. He was great last year, but he came in today. He didn't really have much command. I think he got, he had the walk. And he pulled him out of the game after Stallings had the bent arm 2-run jack to left. And suddenly, this 3-0 game, a bloop and a blast, all of a sudden it's 3-2. But What did you think last year watching the Giant pen? They're 10 deep in the pen right now to start the year, including Tyler Beatty, who's, throwing 98 in spring training. He was a former number one pick. They know he won't clear waivers. So they're almost operating a little bit at a loss there because they don't want to expose this kid to waivers. But at the same time, is he trustworthy? No. So they're in a kind of a tough position. But what did you think of the Giants pen a year ago? And obviously Leon was incredible last year, but today he struggled.
Well, you don't win 107 games without a really good bullpen. I thought their bullpen last year was outstanding. I think I think they probably grew more in that area than any other facet of their team. McGee was in L.A. Didn't pitch a ninth inning. Saw him in Colorado. Did not have a good time in Colorado. Saw him in Tampa, was better there, but didn't see the closer mentality or the closer approach until a year ago. So I think that they were really shrewd and smart in giving people opportunity, figuring out who they were, and being a little bit of patient with them, but really giving them a chance to do something a little bit different, including a lot of the young relievers like Leon. And I think that when you go through the year that they went through last year, again, a lot of growth, a lot of education, a lot of experience that they can take with them going to another level, pitching at another good team, pitching to try and win yet another division. But I think the bullpen is a key thing, and how they use it is very key. Rogers had a lot of respect for Rogers. Doesn't throw hard. He's got the delivery from really almost a submarine delivery like Ted Abernathy used to be years and years ago.
Kenta Colby or Quisenberry or one of these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys like that. And usually when guys throw from that direction, they're not throwing 98. That's their pitch, so to speak. That's where their deception comes from. In order to be a major league pitcher, you've either got to have great stuff, or you got to keep the ball hidden, or you've got to have a delivery that is tough to pick up. I can remember a couple of games last year. He gave it up a little bit, but resilient and continue. And to Cap's credit, continue to show confidence in him, and it paid great dividends for him. But I think the bullpen, you can't even think about winning. Can't even think about it. Hope for it. Can't if you can't pitch.
Yeah, you got to be able to shut down rallies.
Yeah, and nothing will erode a team's confidence more than giving up runs late.
It's weird. It's weird too, Ned, because they don't seem like they really know where they want to use Rogers. You mentioned his stats. His stats, I've got them in front of me. Last year, 80 games. That's a ton of games. 2.22 ERA at a 7-1 record. But it's funny. I thought there was maybe I'm wrong if it wasn't the Dodgers, but I thought it was the Dodgers late in the year who looked like they had a team-wide approach. Their right-handed hitters did to go the other way. And if you're going to go the other way against a pitcher like this, you got so much time because of the lack of velocity. I mean, he's not even breaking mid 80s. He's throwing sub mid 80s at major league hitters. And it just gives them an awful lot of time. Where do you think a guy like this is best? Is he best in a matchup against a certain hitter, or would you feel comfortable in the 8th and 9th inning in high leverage spots, or do you like him more as a changeup? Does it matter like who he's coming in for? How do you what seems like they don't really have a recipe exactly for how they want to use Rogers, but his arm is so resilient and he's gotten the job done a whole lot more than he hasn't. But I'm just not sure what his ideal spot is.
Well, I think he's probably a matchup plus guy. I wouldn't just match him up against one side or the other, even though he's decidedly better at one side than the other. I think he's got enough courage and enough stuff to get through hitters that he's going to have to pitch to and get through a certain part of the order. I think once in a while you can use him late in games. I think he's got enough courage to do that. And if you've got hitters that are anxious and hitters that are not patient and hitters that are not going to go the other way, if you're a right-handed hitter, then you can use him. I think some of it is matchup. I think he's probably, in my mind, a matchup plus. In other words, you're not just going to have him, designated for this part of the lineup. If this happens, if the game is here, That's the only time you're going to use them. I think you can use them a little bit more than that. But it can be a tough watch too, because you're sometimes if your hitters are patient and your hitters can grind out at bats and make somebody throw a strike, or at least put it on the outer half of the plate to a right-handed hitter who's good enough, smart enough to take it to right field. He doesn't have overpowering stuff that he's just going to blow it right past you. He's going to have to get you out, or the hitter is going to have to get themselves out, and that's the difference, and that depends on the hitter's mental approach to it at bat. I say it all the time, no matter a lot of different pitchers. I'll say this pitcher needs the hitter to get himself out because he doesn't have enough stuff to necessarily get this guy out in this situation. But the kid's got courage, and the kid can pitch, and he was remarkable last year, especially against right-handed hitters. I think one side or the other, but I think it was the right-handed hitters.
Well, you would, I'm not even sure because, he's got a little bit of Romo, who's nasty on right-handed hitters, but I think he may even be kind of no picnic for lefties. Now you got two Rogers in the division. I believe the Padres just traded for his twin brother, Taylor Rogers, yesterday. All right, if I had been post game on KMBR, man, the first thing I would have gone with was, oh my goodness, Mauricio Dubon. Just my God, the base running there. This is a player, Ned, who's got some power. He's got some bat speed. He's got some versatility. There's a lot of things to like about Mauricio Dubon, but the instincts on the base pass are just not there. And he's made some high profile mistakes. And on that play, fly ball to right, he's on second base. You got to make the decision quick. You either got to go and get a good break, or you got to stay. And he went back to the bag, tagged, had a second thought about it, came back, but he ran 7 steps off the bag, and he was out at second base, and it wasn't even close. I mean, it was not bang bang. Nobody needed to go to replay. Everybody knew he was out. That, where do you start on something like that? They won the game, so it doesn't burn them, but this is when you have a player who's had repeated mistakes on the base pass. I mean, I would imagine it drives an executive crazy, but at the same time, what do you do? What do you do? Is that on your coaching staff? Is that on the player himself? Do you sit down with the player and you just like zero tolerance because let's nip this in the bud right now? It's opening day. I don't want to see that anymore. Or is that curbing his aggressiveness? How do you view how the Giants kind of deal with the issue of a young player they like, but man, his base running instincts are horrendous?
Well, it's as much as we know, we don't know what goes on inside the clubhouse. We don't know what goes on inside of meetings, whether they're group meetings or whether they're one-on-one. And I think obviously you've got to have the relationship with your players. They have the one-on-one conversations, and sometimes the tough conversations. This division is going to be people are going to be challenged to stay with the Dodgers, and you're going to have to be able to execute. And I'm sure it's conversations that they have. It's on. I think it's on the manager and the coaching staff to provide the instruction, to show how, and to guide. But they're not out there when the play takes place. That's up to the player to execute it, or to seek help and counsel from your third base coach, or to seek counsel prior to an at bat, prior to a ball going out to right field with a guy that's got a plus arm. All those situations, you got to kind of script it out and know where you're at ahead of time. But you're not going to be able to run into a lot of outs and win a division. It's one of the key parts of being successful. You can't be giving up outs, and you certainly can't be giving up outs in extra innings when every team is going to start the inning with a runner on second base. You're think about before that rule. If a team had the leadoff man double, how good you'd feel.
Right, not good at all.
And now every team's got that chance, so you got to be able to cash that in and can't give up that out.
What do you think of the extra inning rule? Do you like it?
I didn't like it at the beginning, but then I was doing 100 and some games of television. And so
The game's end quicker.
you know what, this ain't that bad. Let's move on. It's kind of, I'm a huge hockey fan and work for San Jose, and it's, the shootout, it's, you got 3-on-3 and then you got a shootout. I mean, it's exciting. All of it's exciting. So I think it's good. People have been sitting through a 3-hour game at that point in time. I think that, getting to an outcome is a good thing before people leave, but also making teams execute, because it's a tense situation for the pitcher and also for your infield and for your hitter. I mean, right away, you're starting off at a tough spot. Everybody's starting off at, okay, let's see how good you are. It doesn't work itself up to that. It starts there.
Let's talk about the overview, because the Giants won 107. They lost Solano to the Reds. They lost Chris Bryant. He went to the Rockies. Buster decided to retire. So they've lost some right-handed thump in their lineup for sure. But Vegas has their over-under at 85.5 wins. This team won 107 games. And you could argue that they have a better rotation and as deep or better a bullpen than they've had in the past. They got a farm system that's getting closer to helping at the major league level, and they're a rich team with a lot of revenue. And to me, yeah, I don't love the Giants offense. And I guess if I was pointing to one thing, I'd probably point to the lineup. But what do you think, Ned? I mean, I'm looking at the NL West. This is what Las Vegas says from the NL West. 98.5 wins for the Dodgers, 88 wins for Bob Melvin's Padres, 85 for Gabe's Giants, Rockies at 68.5, Arizona at 66.5. They lost 110 last year. How do you see this division on paper coming into this year? And are the Giants, is it, last year it was like, oh, the Giants for real, the Giants for real, the Giants for real. We talked about it every single month. By June, I think we kind of felt like this team is for real. But now we're into the off season, into the now new season, and was it really all Buster? I mean, I know Buster's a great player, offense, defense, everything, but really, they won 107 and they're gonna fall back to the mid 80s this year without Buster. What do you think of how the outside world, the betting public, sees this division?
Well, first off, with Buster, my evaluation of a player is how much I hated to see a player play against the team I was with.
Right.
And I couldn't stand watching Buster Posey play from the other side,
Right.
So
he's so damn good.
So there's that, I told Chase Utley that when he came to LA, how much I couldn't stand watching him play, and he should take it as a compliment. Baseball is not a sport that one or two players is going to put a team over or not put a team over. It is one of the great team sports of all time. And so you lose Buster Posey. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Chris Bryant, key bat in the lineup. It's a lot. Other players have left. But you still have other teams have lost players too. So it depends on a lot of different things. I don't know that this team never won 107 games before. Okay, they've been around for 150, 60, 70 years. So we know how unique it was. The team that finished one behind had never won 106 before, I don't think. So, we know it was like a unique year for both iconic franchises. Can they do it again? Well, I think the Dodgers are in a better spot to do it again than the Giants. Okay, not 106, 107.
And they lost a lot too. They lost Corey Seager. They lost Kenny Jansen. They lost
Freddie Freeman, though, too. They got picked up Freddie Freeman.
Picked up Freddie Freeman.
And Kimbrel the other day. We'll see how he does in the National League again. And I don't have an answer to this because I'm not around. I'm not in the locker room every day or on either club, really. To me, when you have a year like that, some players, and I'm not saying it's happening, I don't have any idea, but sometimes teams get satisfied with that margin of success. And in professional sports, you can never take your foot off the pedal. You can never do it. As a player on your team, somebody's going to go right past you. As a team in a division, some team is going to take advantage of your foot not being on the pedal and going to beat you 2 out of 3 or over a course of the first half of the season, 9 out of 10 or something like that, and put you in jeopardy of having a good year. So to me, that is, besides Buster leaving and other players, the question I have is, can they maintain and sustain what they did last year? They were remarkable last year. Vegas had them winning what, 70 some
70,
games?
73 or something, yeah,
Yeah. So I mean,
75.
they were remarkable. I mean, has there ever been a team that went so far off of that? Not that those are experts, but whenever
They're
you
putting their
fly
money
over,
down. Yeah,
whenever you fly over Vegas, it looks like it's high noon and it's midnight. With the
right.
lights. So people aren't always winning, so they do know what they're doing. But it'll be interesting to see how they're able to maintain it and how they had so many players. And you've touched on the bullpen who really performed excellent. How many of those players can repeat what they did a year ago in both organizations, in any organization that has won? And I think what separates the Dodgers from a lot of teams is that they're able to wipe clean whatever happened the year before and go at it like they're trying to win a division for the first time. That's what they've done for the last 8, 9 years. Can they maintain it? I don't know. We'll all have to wait and see. Can the Giants find what they had a year ago? Wait and see. No discounting what anybody did last season. That's written in a history book on the game. Okay? But got nothing to do with this year.
Right. You look at the Giants pen, they've got Doval, who's got closer stuff, and they've got McGee, he's a veteran. McGee's a one pitch pitcher. He'll throw a slider, but he's basically a fastball, and then another fastball. You saw him in LA. The Dodgers didn't lean on McGee the way the Giants leaned on McGee last year. But who would you rather close with? Would you rather close with a veteran who you can trust, but he's a one pitch pitcher, and maybe a 1.5 pitch pitcher because like he'll mix in an occasional slider, or a guy like Doval who's got the complete closer arsenal, but he doesn't have, he doesn't have the experience, and you don't know, he may not be unflappable in big situations. So who do you think, or do you think he'll do it by committee, just kind of mix and match all year? What's your best guess how Kapler kind of juggles his closer role?
My best guess is that this will be an evolving situation. I think you'd always like somebody with two pitches, if not three. You'd love somebody with a real power arm. Uh, they can get a strikeout, especially if you're starting the game with a starting inning with a runner on second base. You really need a strikeout in that first hitter. Um, so I think it evolves. I think a lot of times we all try to figure out, okay, let's put the roster together opening day. Let's put the lineup together, put the rotation together, the bullpen together, and think it's going to last that way for 162 games. No, it's always changing. There's going to be roster moves. Baseball started yesterday, Thursday. A lot of teams open today. There's been roster moves already. That opening day roster and some teams has already shifted a player or two. So that is always part of what goes on. And I think what you'd like to have is really 2 or 3 pitchers who can pitch that ninth inning. Whether it's a lefty like McGee, that's a pitch and a half guy as you described, or whether it's somebody with a power arm that's kind of gaining some presence and gaining some responsibility, things like that. I think it evolves. I don't think that today. Rarely can a team say this is how it's going to be, unless you're the Yankees back in the day with Mariano Rivera, or the Giants with Brian Wilson and things like that, and Bobby Nen, and the Dodgers with Kenley. It's tough to say, well, this is how it's going to be 9 out of 10 times all the time. I think in this situation, I think it evolves as the season goes on. And I think the hope is that when they get to the 8th or ninth inning with a 1, 2, 3 run lead, that Gabe has got himself 2, maybe 3 different choices and feel comfortable and confident that they've got the courage and the command to get good hitters out and be able to change speeds and to be able to pitch the location and pitch the situation and hold runners on and know how to field their position. I mean, a lot of boxes to check off, but I think their goal would probably to have 2 or 3 different options in that spot as the season wore on. Nothing against McGee. It was terrific last year. But the more options you've got, the more you can mix and match and sometimes change things up. And let's face it, nobody's going to close. If you've got the lead 90 times in the season in the ninth inning, you're not going to have a guy go out there 90 times. So you need some versatility anyway.
Yeah. We're so lucky to have you here breaking down baseball with us and talking ball. And people, if you're in the chat and you have a question for Ned, feel free to line up. We'll get to some of them. We got to hit our sponsors here, which, we have some fantastic sponsors to this show. And Dan Coach Emilio is one of them. Give Dan a call today, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com. He is a Giants fan, Niner fan, Warrior fan, great guy, and he's a retirement planning specialist. And he's going to help keep your money secure in uncertain times. And believe me, right now, I would consider uncertain times the way the world is going and all that's going on in the world. More now than ever, you want to make sure your money is secure. And Danny is a good friend. He's got 25 years of experience, born and bred right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% or premium bonus on your principal retirement account. Give him a call today, 925-628-9966. Give him a call, make an appointment, make sure you're putting your money where it is secure. Once again, Dan Coach Emilio, retirement planning specialist at securemoney.com, 925-628-9966. Your fellow Bay Area sports fan and retirement planning specialist. He's a good friend of mine, and he's an honest guy, and he does a lot of great things for people. So if you are looking for a financial advisor, you want to go with somebody that you trust, right? You want to go with somebody that you know, somebody that you believe in, and you can definitely believe in Danny. And then we have our other sponsor as well, Telmetrics.co, Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. And they're a brand new sponsor, and it's a company that's using computer vision to meaningfully extend the physical therapy clinic and enhance the capabilities of medical professionals to inspire positive outcomes. And they're providing a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in clinical and in telehealth environments. And it's a new technology, and it will enhance and support rehab therapy professionals who specialize in improving musculoskeletal conditions. And if you're an orthopedic surgeon, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or chiropractor, you're probably using Telmetrics, and Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So Telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. They are our sponsors of the Krueg Show, and we thank them. Couple things before we hit the chat and get some of these people's thoughts, and then we'll let you get on with your night because we've been talking for almost an hour and a half here. Couple things. One, do you looking at this at the league, we really have, it's the beginning of the year. Who do you like right now? I was looking at, to me, I hate to say this, I would probably pick the Dodgers in the West, just on paper, the addition of Freddie Freeman, the wealth of that organization. Giants, look what the Giants had to do last year to break the Dodgers' 8-year stranglehold on this division. It was a Herculean effort. I expect LA to win the division this year, as much as that pains me to say. I like the Brewers in the Central, Ned. I think that those top three starters, it's not Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine with the Braves, but if there's a rotation in the National League that almost guarantees that they're going to be in the postseason, I don't think it's Milwaukee. Before I even get to the East, give me your thought on what is going on with Christian Yelich. This guy was a great player, Ned, not that long ago, and suddenly he's kind of taken a step back. If he's the Christian Yelich from a couple years ago with the starting pitching and the combination of Hader and Devin Williams, some of the guys they have in that bullpen, I like Milwaukee to outrun the Cubs and, the Cardinals and anybody else who's going to step up and be accounted for in that Central. I like Milwaukee, but what do you make of Yelich? What's the talk around the game? Why is he backslid so severely?
Yeah, it's one of the great mysteries, because one of the great players. Both in Florida, and then he went to Milwaukee and became an MVP, and almost a two-time MVP.
Right.
It's a tough sport to play, and it's tough to stay at the utmost level and really the performance of it. And you don't see it a lot. Usually, you see a slow taper, but it was a little bit of a drastic decline there for a really, really great player. Tough to say, but I agree with your view of LA and the West. I think both the Giants and the Dodgers have benefited by Tatis missing half a season because of the wrist. I think that's a benefit to both those teams. San Diego, I thought, with new manager, somebody you know well from the Bay Area.
Yeah, good manager too.
Yeah, I think that had a chance to really be one of the key acquisitions in the National League West was the manager of San Diego and the coaching staff. But you're missing one of your best players, one of the game's best players for probably half the season. Milwaukee's pitching is good. Can it continue to be as good as it's been? You're always going to be challenged with that. So it'd be interesting to see. I think in the East, I think Atlanta, if they can keep them, we talked about this a while back. Keep that hunger, and they got World Series rings now. Are they going to be as hungry as they were a year ago, and as driven and as fierce as they were a year ago? Certainly capable. They may have a better team this year than they did a year ago. So, but you still got to play it out. The Mets are interesting. New owner, spent a lot of money, all of that. Their top two
sure added a lot.
Yeah, their top two pitchers are DeGrom and Scherzer. Well, if this was 5 years ago, it'd be tough to beat those two guys anytime. But it's not 5 years ago. It's today. And you've got a long season to go. Teams like that spend like that, they're not looking at 162 in 6 months. They're looking at 7 months. And so do they have enough to get them to that point? They're going to play good teams all the way through. Philly's better. They got their competition is going to test them, as it will Atlanta, and it does every team. But they've got a little bit more in the East, I think, to contend with than most teams have. And I think that Atlanta is probably still the class of that division.
What is going on? And I asked you this last year, but then he had this great postseason. What is going on with Cody Bellinger? He's striking out a ton in spring training. He had a terrible year. I've heard people I've heard people whisper that he's done. I mean, that's the unthinkable. He cannot be done. He absolutely cannot be done. But where are you with Cody Bellinger? And if LA, with their incredible payroll and their incredible depth, they added Freddie Freeman, brought in, Betances, they've got, Kimbrel, they've fortified their bullpen in March. Friedman did. What is up with Bellinger? And if LA has a weakness, Ned, what do you view it as?
Well, I think the starting pitching, I'll start with that. I think the starting pitching depends what happens with the Trevor Bauer situation. I think that, they're probably going to need another starting pitcher at some point in time. I think if I was in that seat, I would be a little bit more patient than I might have been. I think that the Tatis injury gives me a little bit more time to kind of sort through things. I think the bullpen, I think if Kimbrel can come back along with Trinan, and you've got other pitchers. We talked about the Giants bullpen, how your closers are sometimes they're made out of necessity, and they're made out of situations, and they grow into it. I think that from the fifth, sixth inning on, I think the Dodgers have multiple choices to run out in that bullpen. All quality, all guys that have pitched in big games have been successful. As far as Cody goes, like Jock and a few others, the guys that I've known since they were 18 when we drafted them, and he's probably the one player that I maybe pushed early in his professional career in the minor leagues because of his ability to adapt. Mm-hmm. And I'd move him up a level, whether it was low A, high A, double A, triple A, whatever, move him up a level, maybe a month early, 2 months early, because his adjustment ability was really, really good. And he did that. He did it for a long time. What he's been going through the last year plus has been a challenge. And it shows you how tough it is to play. We talked about Christian Yelich. About two guys that were neck and neck for the MVP not that long ago that have both struggled. I think that sometimes hitters will try to do too much. The blessing and the curse of baseball is you play every day. And so you have a chance to get better tomorrow and as soon as you get cold, you can get hot. But also, if you're struggling, you don't have a week to fix it. You're going to have maybe a day to fix it, or maybe over a course of a week or 10 days. for playing every day. So I think that's one of the great tests of the sport, and I think that it's a struggle. I've seen him change his approach at the plate a lot. I see him move his hands a lot. I see different things. Actually, I saw that with Jock a lot of different times too during his Dodger career, where when he could settle into a certain approach at the plate, he was excellent. But as he maybe went 0 for 4, 0 for 8, 1 for 12,
Too much tinkering.
yeah, you start to change things up. And the pitching's too good. Good pitchers can see that you're tinkering. They can see what you're doing. And you may be putting a hole into your swing, by accident, but not knowing it. But they're going to tell you did by where they pitch you and how they pitch you. So I think it's a matter of adjusting and finding something that works and sticking with it. And that's the struggle sometimes. He's not an old player. He's not
Right.
a physically fit player. He's not an unathletic player. I mean, he has all the tools and all the physical attributes and more experience than ever to return to where he was, as does Christian Yelich. But it's not always. It's not. It's easy for me to sit here and say it. It's not easy when you're playing it.
Is it harder to build a team? I mean, LA's got so many advantages, right? They have a lot of money and a great farm system. Is LA a hard place to build chemistry? I've heard so many teams, they talk, oh, going back to Sparky Anderson in the 70s, used to say, by the time the season, gets rolling, these guys will be going in 25 different directions. And there were times when LA was struggle with talent. People would say, 25 guys, 25 cabs. It's so spread out. You got guys that could live at the beach. You got guys that could live, in Pasadena or different parts of LA. And these guys they're a great distance away from each other. Does that play a role at all in the chemistry of a club that you could have in a city so large that it might be kind of that they don't necessarily see each other maybe ever outside of the ballpark? Or is that overplayed and it's a non-factor really at the end of the day?
Well, I think it can be effective. I've only got like 2% left on my battery, so I
Okay.
don't want to
Okay.
just float away. Um, I think it can be a factor. I don't think it is a factor with this group. This group is fierce with their approach, and they're driven to win a championship. They won their first one a couple years ago. People say, well, it was a shortened season. It was a longer playoff. A lot of different things going on in 2020 that nobody ever had to go for and figure out. One for the first time since 1988, but no parade, no celebration. Not like the Giants had 3 times in a very short period of time. They
Yeah.
missed all that, and they know they missed all that. And so I think that the drive and really the nucleus and it's carried over. And you had a guy like Freddie Freeman a couple years ago. You had a guy like Mookie Betts, and you're continuing to fortify that core of Ken Lee when he was there, and Corey Seager and Clayton and on, and Justin Turner. You get Trey Turner a year ago. I mean, batting title, stolen base title. Jackie Robinson, I think, was the last Dodger to do that. So it's got a lot of talent. I think their drive for success is so strong that I don't think any type of chemistry or issues like that ever really do creep in. I haven't heard about it for a long time. I'll say one thing too about, I'm not from LA, I'm not from San Francisco, I'm from Chicago. But everybody would always say, well, LA's kind of laid back and, it's easy going and the fans come late and leave early. I think it may be one of the toughest places to play in because if you're in Boston, New York, or Philly, the heat is on you every day, maybe from the inside of the clubhouse and ownership and the front office, but really, really from the fan base and the media. You can't go anywhere if you're having a tough year or a bad season. So in LA, it's a little bit different than that. But the stakes are still high. You don't sell nearly 4 million tickets and not have people care about how your team does. And when I had one team that was under 500 in my 9 years there, and people didn't show up. People found other things to do. It's like San Francisco, there's a million things to do besides go to the ballpark. And I think that happens. And I think that the fierceness of it is not going to come necessarily from the outside like a Philly, New York, or Boston. So it's got to be inside that room every day.
Hey, we're going to let you go because we don't want your battery to die. But awesome talking ball with you. We'd love to have you back. The fans really enjoy it. I spent too much time yapping about the game, and we didn't get enough to the chat today.
Oh, that's okay.
But we'd love to have you back and talk ball throughout the year. And it's a pleasure to kind of pick your brain on some of these things and get a perspective of somebody from an actual front office who actually has lived the game and been in the game. So we really appreciate it, buddy. We should tell people they should go out right now, purchase The Big Chair, Ned's book. It's a phenomenal book. Go get it on Amazon. We'll have a link at some point that we'll put up there for The Big Chair. But if you haven't read it, awesome stories. And we'll get into some of these stories as the season progresses. But Ned, thanks for coming on. Happy opening day to you. And I'm not sure what day we'll do this again, but man, it's a pleasure. And we're really excited that we'll get a chance this year to talk ball with you.
We'll relive those great KNBR days, Larry. We'll be doing it a lot. Be
Sounds
well.
good.
Thank you very much, pal.
Thanks, Ned.
My best.
All right. Thanks to everybody who participated. That's the end of our show for today. Giants win the opener in 10 innings. Austin Slater with the double to win it. And the Giants start off 2022 on the victory side, on the W side, 1-0 with the couple games following over the weekend. Thanks to Len. Thanks to Ryan. Thanks to all the people in the chat that we didn't get to. And then thanks to everybody who's made this, this YouTube thing an awful lot of fun for me. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Be sure to hit the reminder bell. I'll call it that, the notification button, so you can catch all of the upcoming shows. Love you guys, having a ton of fun here on YouTube. Thanks for supporting my channel. And until next time, often wrong, seldom in doubt. Have a great night, everybody.